Hi everyone, Dee Rondinella, Coordinator of Technology Training for the Stark Library. This month I'm going to launch a new series, Gift Giving from the Heart and Home. It's going to be a series of items that you'll be able to make from either of your things that you have at home or things that you can find inside of the Maker Studio and you can give as a gift throughout the year. We're going to go ahead and get started with this one. It is a fabric wreath. And if you look over here, you're going to see my sample. I have a candle on the top and I have my wreath on the bottom. I'm going to remove the candle so you can see what it looks like. It is a three-dimensional and it does indeed have multiple fabrics as well as bubbles and buttons on it. So let's get started. The tools that you're going to need, of course, is a sewing machine. You're going to need some rulers for cutting and lining up. You can use scissors or a rotary cutter. I also use squares to help me with my fabric. Now, once you have those gathered, I also use pins, iron, and starch when needed. The fabric that you can use has a variety of different fabrics. As I said, you can make this for throughout the year, give it as a gift, or you can keep it for yourself. You can see I have things like Easter, I have St. Patrick's Day, and one of my favorites is the red, white, and blue because I like to give the wreaths along with a red geranium for what we have Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. But for today, we're going to use this two types of pattern. It's a little bit on a fall, cool day, so I thought that would be nice to make. You're going to notice I have two colors that they are in a family or a grouping of fabrics. The first one that I've cut is 8 inches by 8 inches. The second one that I have cut is 6 inches by 6 inches. You have the difference so that you can fold it over and iron to create a seam. The other thing that you're going to need when it comes to fabric is it's an interfacing that's fusible. You want the one that's only fusible on one side, all right? Because you want the other side not to bond to your table as you're ironing. You only want it to bond to the fabric. Now let's go ahead and let's get started when it comes to making this. I'm going to put my things aside so we can get moving. My fabric is cut. It's ready to go. My tools are out of my way. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place my fusible interfacing on my 6-inch squares. And if you look very closely, and I'll show you this, you're going to discover that they are exactly the same size. I place my fabric down towards the mat. So, and then I put my glue side of my webbing down. Now, I do not press on the interfacing. It will tear. So what I do is I flip it over and I line it up to make sure it's good, and I take my iron and I give it a press. Now I'm going to take a few moments and I'm going to do all of mine. Now you have to cut 12 of each, 12 8-inch and 12 6-inch squares, as well as 12 of your 6-inch square interfacing. Give me a moment and I will be right back. All right, I have finished ironing the interfacing on my smaller blocks, my 6-inch by 6-inch blocks, and I'm going to set those aside for a minute because I want to talk about the 8-inch by 8-inch block. Typically it's the darker fabric, but it doesn't have to be, because what we have to do is we have to center our smaller block on our 8-inch block. And the reason we need to center it is because we're going to create a seam. We're going to press that seam and then we're going to sew it. And that's very important to get everything straight and measured properly. So let me show you how that's done. I have with me a small ruler, and so I lay it on here, and I know that it's got to have at least 1 inch in so that we can lay the 6-inch marker down, right? So you noticed it is the right side down, and I'm going to place it with the right side up for the other fabric. And so I'm lining it so it's 1 inch on each side. If you don't get it perfect, it's okay. It will come out when you make your seam. I'll remove that. Now, one of the things I have, and it's not necessary, but it's a great tool, this is a tailor's pressing ruler. And what that means is I can literally iron over the top of it so that my seams are crisp and straight. So I'm going to place this, and the first one I'm going to do, it's running along the edge of the 6-inch block. I'm going to roll it over, take my iron, and I'm going to give it a small press. Now, you don't turn to the other sides yet. You're still going to continue on with this side, because my second press is my first curl. So what I'm going to do is I'm rolling it over so the raw edge of the dark fabric touches the raw edge of the light fabric. Then I will roll it again, and there I have my seam. When I have that, I give it another press, and I'm ready to move on to my next side. I'm going to pick it up and turn it because that's what I have to do. I'm going to do the same thing to my sides, take my pressing iron, keep on moving it through, and I'm going to complete this. And I want to take one moment and I want to show you how to take care of these edges. All right, because you're going to have this edge here, right here, where it's going to come to the corner. So when you fold that, you want to make sure the raw edge is not seen. And it does take a little bit of practice, but if you just work at it, it will happen. Now, once you get it pressed, if you want to put a pin in it, that's perfectly okay. It will help it. And so what will happen when you're through with yours, it will look like this. It will all be curled around that block. So I'm going to go ahead now and finish pressing these, and then we're going to come back and we're going to sew them. I'll be right back. All right, I went ahead and I finished all of my pressing as well as the sewing of the blocks. To help you with the sewing of the blocks, what I do is I start in one corner with my seams folded over. I go to the other corner, I lift the foot of the machine with the needle down, and I turn the block and I go to the next, and I do the same thing until I come to where I started at. I went ahead and I did that with all of the blocks. You have one more final step of prep to do before we can turn it into a wreath. It has to do with the marking so that you can sew straight lines and put them together. Right? So what I did is I use a square as well as a ruler and a pencil. You can use a piece of chalk or what we call a chalk pencil if you're working with a dark fabric and need to be able to see your markings. So what I do is the top of my block, my top, has to be 3 inches down on both sides, while the bottom has to be 1 inch up on both sides. So I mark it, and let me show you what I do. There's my 3 inch on my ruler. Okay, let me show. All right, here's my 3 inch on my ruler, and I put a line here, and I put a line over here. I do the same thing at the bottom with 1 inch. And then I take my standard ruler and I mark it to connect those two lines. And you can see if you look really, really closely, I have pencil lines already on mine. I only mark 6 of them. Sometimes 7 if I think I'm going to forget something. The reason being is when you go to sew this, you take one without the markings and you lay one with the markings on it, and you sew them together along that line. Now I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to sew this. And then when I come back, I'm going to show you several of them put together so that you can see how it works. I have finished sewing all of those pieces together using my lines that I had drawn on my blocks. So you can see I started at the corner of the 1 inch and I start at the 3 inch here so that you can see. Let me raise it. All right. And so I have them all connected. So let me show you. I've got it on a square so you can see what it's going to look like. Now we're not quite finished yet, but you do have it assembled. So let me show you some of the finishing touches you can do to finish it off. Now, you can leave it open like this. I mean, sir, it is your choice. It is lovely just like this. Or you can pull these edges together and you can either, I know some people who just use a little glue on them. I myself, being a seamstress, I like to sew them together, but you can sew them, all of your points together. Or you can use like buttons and sew buttons so that the buttons hold it together. You can do something like that. Or you can even fold the ends in and give them another seam so that they look nice and neat on the ends with turnover corners. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to put all of mine together with a little bit of tacking on my machine. And I'm going to show you then some of the baubles that you can use to elaborate or to decorate your wreath. Give me a few moments and I'll be right back. All right, I went ahead and I tacked down all of my corners. Can you see? All right. So now what I may want to do is decorate it. You don't have to if you don't want to at this point. If you wanted to, you could just put a candle right in the center of it. Or you can put a bowl and put fruit in the center of that. Or you can put a bouquet of flowers, some silk flowers, right in the middle as well. But I have a tendency to collect what we call baubles. That's my mother's term, and it was little items that you could dress up with. And I have buttons here. I have shiny buttons. I also have decorative buttons that you can get and you can use on your wreaths as well. I would probably most likely use a nice little yellow button, and it would emphasize the colors in the background. And then probably purchase a very nice, lovely candle, placing it in the middle, or if it's something for the summer, putting a small live plant in the middle as well. If you need any assistance at all, please don't be afraid to contact me at the Stark Library. Just ask for Dee, and they'll put you in contact with me. And I hope that you enjoy this, and I hope you have fun giving it away to another person. Thank you.